Oh, you did?
I'm staff.
No, it's your staff.
Okay, you ready, guys? Okay, I'd like to call the City of Fairview Municipal Planning Commission regular meeting of February 12, 2013 to order. Time is 7:03. Our first order on the agenda is an opening. Don, can you help us with an opening, please? Prayer and pledge.
Please bow. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day that you have created for us. Father, we thank you for all your blessings. Father, we ask that you would guide these men and women as they undertake the business of the city, that their decisions would be in the best interest of the citizens. Father, we ask these things in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we are looking at the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
Motion for approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Citizens' comment? I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Chairman.
In the minutes, yes, I have one myself, number 4. We have citizens' comments.
There are no citizens' comments tonight, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Cantrell. Approval of the minutes, item 4. I have one. Ms. Helly, do you have one on the minutes? What? Go ahead.
Under Commissioner comments, instead of my comments that says I used to use the word be loud.
Yes. I saw that. That was good. Also, item 1, Vice Chairman Mike Smith called the meeting to order. Mr. Hall, I believe, wasn't here. No, item 1, instead of Chairman Hall, call the meeting to order. Not a problem.
Chairman Smith
Vice Chairman Smith at the
at
time.
the time. Oh,
Let's keep it legal.
okay.
Any other changes to the minutes?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, item 5, we have recommendations from 2012-2, 10. Any, doesn't appear to be any. All right. Item 6 are bonds.
6.1 Stable Acres, we have that bond. It was extended. 6.2, you have the engineer's report in front of you regarding Western Woods. They had the city engineer go out to inspect that subdivision. The developer was requesting the bond be reduced. City engineers recommending that the bond be reduced to $80,240. So it's up to this board to make that decision.
I move. Second.
Any discussion?
Let the record please reflect that the developer is present.
Yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Cunningham is here. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. 7.1, old business. Discuss under action of recommendation from the workshop meeting to amend the Fairview Municipal Zoning Ordinance relative to home-based businesses. We had a good meeting earlier this evening. We have specific things that we've wanted to look at in terms that will be presented in draft form to be voted on for next meeting, but we wanted to lay those out for everyone that was not at the meeting tonight and answer any questions or discussion. Ms. Elliott, can you help us out on the areas that were changed?
Is your mic on? Sorry.
I need to look or have you perhaps read what you have open. I closed my code book, but I jotted down here the change that we made to read that any other business. Essentially, we were talking about the following are specifically prohibited as minor home occupations, but not limited to, but may be permitted as, and then the rest would read as it is written, adding the phrase, any other business that the zoning authority deems to be a major home occupation.
That would be under the minor home businesses, in subsection J, would be number 10.
Right.
That further defines the major home occupations that are out. And then everything under that,
I'm going to make it papers on the
I'm sorry.
microphone. That's the noise.
new help.
It's rain, I guess.
Then under table 5.102A continued under major home occupations, the following chart will be changed where these now have conditional use under C will now be eliminated, and under major home occupations will be RM20, RM12, RM8, RMHP, RS8, RS5, and there was one more, RSM,
RS10.
RS10. The chart for the time being, well, the way we have left it is the chart would stay, everything else on the chart would stay the same.
But those last four zones have not been fully discussed.
No, and at this time, if you want to make a motion to accept the changes, then we can go into discussion on making any amendment or changes to the motion, if we so choose.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we accept the changes for the major home occupations under the residential districts that you have just quoted, which were the RS5, RS8, RS10, RMHP, RM8, RM12, and RM20. That's C, the C, conditional be omitted.
Second. Open it up for discussion? No, but we would like to talk about, there are the RS40, RSM40, R20, and the RS15 are parts of this zoning ordinance that these major home occupations would still be allowed. We did run out of time, so we wanted to bring this up at this time to see if there are any changes on these acre and half-acre lots and third-acre lots. Because it was a fairly straightforward agreement on the other ones. We just didn't get a chance to look at the half-acre, full-acre, lower-density housing.
For the public or someone who was not present, some of these eliminations came due to some of the requirements that were asked they did not meet and could not meet because of their setbacks or because of the driveways and different things that almost eliminated themselves because of that. So that was why those items were specific in what he just addressed.
Okay.
Like multifamily situations. Whereas these last four, as he mentioned, RS40, RSM40, RS20 and RS15, we didn't get full discussion, so I'm of discussing and continuing discussing the benefits or issues that come with that.
Any comments? Okay, when we look at the subdivision regulations and we look at the zoning of the R20 and the R15, we're looking at homes that are, correct me if I'm wrong, at least the R20 is a half acre. The RS15 is a third of an acre? Okay, so we're looking at that type of density, and now we want to consider, do we want major home-based businesses in that type of a density application on these, this residential housing?
I will make a note that these are the majority of your houses built because there's not very many less than a third. There's two subdivisions, Fernville Heights and Springway, and there may be others petitioned for, but it's not your bulk of your subdivision. That's just general information. And most of the subdivisions being built are in between your third to 1 acre. So that is your bulk of your subdivisions that we're discussing.
Definition of major home-based business.
Was you going to say something?
That's true for Old Fairview.
Existing, yes, sir.
Brownland Farms will have the average lot size in Brownland Farms will be around 10 to 12,000 square feet. The average lot size in Highbury Point will be 8 to 10,000 square feet. So the newer subdivisions coming on are going with, higher density, but in a PUD situation where they're planned unit development. So most of those subdivisions will have homeowners associations and restricted covenants that are enforced by a homeowners association. So if the homeowners association does not allow for home-based businesses and the restricted covenants read that they have to seek approval from the homeowners association prior to submitting an application to the city, then they might could control the home-based businesses that way in the subdivision if they wanted to.
I do feel that some of our public comments and some of the situations, whether it's limited in a major or not, that it does need to be considered how is the footprint and the safety for the other citizens of the community and the subdivision, how does that reflect? And I believe that's a major consideration with traffic, parking, delivery trucks, the items that were pointed out, that we do agree that creates a different atmosphere in the subdivision than was intended, I guess. You asked for a definition?
Just because I want to clarify I'm not in favor of the major home occupations in a subdivision, but
Well, looking at the chart and the density, let's take a look at this thing as we go through each individual zoning. We have an RS15, which is approximately a third of an acre. You're looking at, 30,000 square feet? 30,000 square, 27.5 square feet?
50,000 square foot lots.
Okay.
Side setbacks will be 15 feet.
So realistically, you could have a home 30 feet apart on that type of zoning. It was pretty dense. And then you got a driveway, and the front setback,
Is 35.
I think we're building, this envelope here does not appear to be, from a parking standpoint, from the things that we were talking about in the workshop, that would be conducive for a major home-based business.
Well, I do want to point out, I don't disagree, but I do want to point out on our Article 3-54, it walks through restrictions for the major, and I want to be clear that everybody knows what those are, because if it's an assumption that they don't have any restrictions, but these restrictions are pretty aggressive, I just want to make sure before someone just blankets, no, none at all, not that I agree or disagree, make sure, I'm assuming everybody knows that they already have those restrictions of hours and parking and noise and participants, hazards.
And that's kind of where I was going, since there was a workshop, I just kind of, since we're discussing, letting the public know what we're looking at as far as the restrictions for a major.
But it was also brought up at the workshop that by looking at the chart, the general public can have a fairly easy identified method to say yes or no, I can have a major home-based business, instead of going through all the specifications and realizing, no, I can't. So I think it cleans up the specifications and makes it easier for the general public to be able to have a chart, and looking at the attributes of this RS-15 zoning, it's not going to, most of the time, it will not work for this type, for the specifications that we have in place. If they choose and they disagree, they can always go to the Board of Zoning Appeals to be able to see if they can get their business in place. Remember, there's all, we will have to grandfather in anybody that's already in business, and there is a Board of Zoning Appeals method to go to see if there is a, another avenue to take. So the public will have choices even after we change these.
But even if someone has a major home-based business, it's re-looked at each year.
Every 2 years.
Every 2 years. Every 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're not following the guidelines that are set forth, even if, they're already in business,
That's why
after that 2 years, or even before that, right?
That's why it's
If they're not meeting,
That's why it's conditional and
Right.
not permanent.
right.
But I don't believe that if they're already there and they're grandfathered in and they've exceeded the 2 years, that it would qualify for that, would it, Don?
Now, once their 2-year permit
We'll amend it after we get this.
is lapsed, then they have to come in compliance with whatever's in, regulation is in place at that time.
And grandfathering doesn't allow you to operate illegally.
Right.
I mean, if you're doing something that's wrong,
That's the point I was trying to make.
yeah.
So that means any major occupation that has been approved right now, when their 2 years is up, they have to fall into compliance with what is decided, and if it's decided that there's no major occupation in these zones, then they can no longer have their major home-based business, right?
Well, their permit lapses, so they'd have to reapply.
But they have to reapply under our
They
new,
would have to reapply under our
Okay.
new
And they'd be told,
guidelines.
no.
and they'll be
close your
told,
business.
close your business.
No, that's not, I thought if you're grandfathered in, as long as you're applying, you're doing.
Well, if you're reading the code, their permit lapses in 2
In
years.
2 years, they have to reapply for.
So they have to reapply.
And fall under the new
Now,
guidelines.
the minor home occupation automatically renews every 2
What's
years.
the difference, obviously?
That's different.
I think what the confusion about is the difference between zoning and a conditional use permit. If the zoning changes, you're grandfathered in, and as long as you continue to operate that business, you stay grandfathered in. But that's a zoning change. A conditional use permit only lasts for 2 years. In other words, look at it like this: if you're grandfathered in under a zoning change, And as long as you continue to operate that business, you're a prior existing non-conforming use. If you cease to operate that business for 30 months and then you want to open it again, you have to comply with the existing zoning. Well, you got the same thing with a conditional use permit. When my permit expires, that permit is no longer there. I've got to apply for a new permit, and I'm going to have to comply with the ordinance the way it is now, because it's not zoning, it's a conditional use permit.
And with an example of the beauty salons, they had to get a conditional, am I correct? They had to get a conditional use permit. When their 2 years is up, they have to comply with what we decide, and they could be shut down. Is that correct? After all the modifications they've had to their house and...
If you remove the ability for them to do it, yes. And that's the discussion you're having.
Right.
Just a general, to throw us off, what properties do we still have inside the city that fall under the codes approval of the county? The old Phantom Club there was an example for a while, but once they were closed down long enough, they came within restrictions of the city, right?
Yes, sir.
Do we have any more of those properties available right now, or still in effect?
Well, we've got some vacant buildings, but until it reaches the 30 months,
Right.
there still would be in compliant with...
So we're
with
fast getting rid of those, so we don't have a problem to deal with them.
Okay. The RS-15 is the highest density. I look at a roll call vote is appropriate, but I need to know how people feel about adding the RS-15, but to eliminate the conditional use permit for this chart.
Chairman,
Yes, sir.
the biggest issue is probably parking. And in that major home occupation, it says a parking plan shall be presented with each request for a conditional use permit presented hereunder. The plan shall demonstrate that adequate off-street parking can be provided on the site to accommodate the additional needs generated by the home occupation, that any added parking will not distract from the visual appearance of the residence or adversely impact adjoining properties. So when they come to the Board of Zoning Appeals with their conditional use permit application, they're going to have to show that they can provide for their off-street parking on their property and have to show a plan how they're going to accomplish that.
Not concrete your front yard.
Yeah. So it doesn't distract from the neighborhood. They can't be parking on the grass and things of that nature. So even if you allow it in the RS-15 and the lot sizes are smaller, if they can show that they can accommodate the parking required to do their business, would you disallow it?
Okay.
I would not disallow it in that case.
I understand, and it's that way, I don't have a problem with it.
So we would keep the C.
We would make it a conditional use
Yeah.
permit, subject to the regulations that we have in place every 2 years.
The 15.
And like I've said, the Board of Zoning Appeals can do above and beyond this, but this is required for the home-based business or major home occupation. Now, the Board of Zoning Appeals could look at the plan and say, we don't think that it meets the intent of the ordinance and disapprove it based on that. Or they could say, okay, I don't totally agree with your parking plan. You should do it this way as a condition of the approval. So the Board of Zoning Appeals has that authority to make those changes or tell them, this is the conditions upon which you're going to get your approval. You have to do it this way to get your conditional use permit. So it's two parts of that. They have to meet this, but then they have to do what the Board of Zoning Appeals tells them also.
Can we do exclusions?
I thought we were told at one time that we could choose,
Well,
we could narrow it down to what businesses
And
were
can we
allowed.
do exclusions like the first minor and then have the catch at the end? Statement of the codes deemed not the intent of the ordinance?
Well, you can say these businesses are considered major home occupations. These businesses would not be allowed in a residential home-based business.
Okay, and that may be where I'm going with this, and I'll use an example, and no offense to anyone who's in the business or wants to do this, but I believe a wrecker service or a mechanic service or something is just not a neighborhood-friendly business. It would definitely cross the change. In no way the appearance, it says the appearance of the structure. I'm sure in here somewhere it says it can't look like it just doesn't look like a mechanic shop in the outside. And I know in one of the subdivisions, there is a concern of a shade tree mechanic in the yard of a half-acre subdivision, and he's a major and has a use permit, and I just think that's not good for the subdivision. So that's why I asked, can we do exclusions of something, or do you get a wild chase on that, or what?
You can exclude whatever business you want from being permissible in a residential setting.
Do we want to get
But
comments
you
on that?
you'll have to be specific in what you're wanting in that ordinance. These are specifically prohibited.
Yeah.
What about just operations having to be done inside the home? Because that's what I was thinking, mechanic, because I've heard that where, it's very visible. You drive through, you see, broken down cars being worked on or on, concrete blocks or something.
There's also part
They
of the
work on them
code.
inside of a garage.
There's also part of the code that says it must be attached to the home. It can't be separate from the home. You can't have a full-car garage sitting out here, not attached to the home. All right, Don?
That's correct.
It has to be attached to the home.
And again, and this is for businesses, not private individuals working on their cars out in their yard. And this is for a commercial enterprise. You got to be able to write the specification that either it works for everybody or we have to exclude specific items. And what it looks like is that we need to be looking at the exclusionary
I want to highlight in 6C, which is under 3-54, a home occupation shall be conducted within a dwelling and shall be clearly incidental to the use of the structure as a dwelling. No more than 500 square foot or 25% of the floor area of the dwelling, whichever is less, may be utilized as the home occupation.
And then you have residential appearance and character listed next in our already existing ordinance. And in the case, the example that you just cited, I have to ask myself, does that business meet this conditional use that already exists?
Yeah. If it's outside mechanic parts, visible man with the block in a tree.
So why would we need a different exclusion if it already
It
exists?
just means it's either not being enforced or they were grandfathered and it's an incidental situation
And I
on
don't
that
know,
particular subject.
I don't know which one you're talking about, so.
I don't know who, when
I've
I've been on the board for 7 years.
As far as trying to, when we were listing the major occupations, this exclusionary stuff, that list could go on forever. And like you were saying, do we not define it well enough as far as in what's written here already in major? Just to say, look at what we have,
Well,
would be my question.
I think you can still
How many square feet is that?
these are specifically prohibited. And then, you look at the code, somebody comes in and says, I want to do this, I'll say, well, it's prohibited, so there's no use of discussing it. Now, if you get into it, okay, it may be permissible, then we got to sit down and discuss it and find out if they can meet the code. So if they know up front it's specifically prohibited, then we're not going to spend a whole lot of discussion and time of theirs or mine.
Well, you have the authority for interpretation of these ordinances, am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Above whatever, no matter whatever we're writing in here, you still have, part of your charge is interpretation of the
My job
ordinance.
is to interpret the code and enforce it.
Okay, as you view it.
Yes, as I view it.
Okay. 'Cause that's going to eliminate a lot of the stuff that we're talking about. He's just not going to do it if he feels like it's against what we're talking about. And if he's still going to come in front of us to get a conditional occupation, am I right, Don?
If it's a major home occupation, yes.
And so we're still going to have an option on that, but it's, I've seen him have to do it before. We wonder why, and he would come explain to us why, but he has the option to do that. We had a major conversation here with a lady on the phone one night. I was just listening to it. I wouldn't have listened to it myself, but it was his discretion for him to move forward and give it to him or not, and he chose not to, and he's perfectly within his rights to do that.
Where's the policing in this? Because if, okay, we give someone a conditional use permit and they're going forward with their business and they have 1,000 square feet finished for the business and it says 500, where does the policing come into this?
Well, when John goes out to do the inspection, he makes sure that they're only supposed to be doing the 500 square foot or 25% of the floor area, whichever is less, is what it is. He goes out and does an inspection, make sure that they haven't changed the character of the residence to make it look like a business. He makes sure that the area that they are doing the business in is inside the dwelling, and that it's no more than the required space.
Before they get like a
Before he
green
signs
light.
off on the CO.
That's how they get their CO.
Okay.
And then if that's been approved, then that is continued up forward.
Yes.
What kind of things in the major home are you able to say these 5 things, these 3 things just consistently keep coming up and maybe that's something for us to look at in exclusion? Can you direct us?
Well, I mean, more people have complaints about beauty salons than anything. And when we post the signs on the properties for the Board of Zoning Appeals, we get calls about, the gun business. Guns and hair salons tend to generate more concern than any other major home occupation that we have. Construction businesses do not typically have concerns because they're really not supposed to keep any of their heavy equipment on site. If they do, then it's got to be out of sight, that it can't be visible from the street. And most time we tell them, if you got a garage, you need to keep it in the garage. So those businesses don't tend to generate as much concern as gun dealers or gunsmithing or hair salons.
Is it true that the hair salon topic that continues to resurface is coming about now because we had some commercial closures and the employees of those businesses needed work and they set up their shops? So if I remember correctly, we had something like 5 applications last year and maybe 3 of those may have come out of closures.
Well, the one up here next to the daycare center generated 2. The last 2 that we've done, that's where that
Yes.
one's generated from. And they're actually not in business yet, because I don't think they've completely closed up there yet, have they?
The one on Fernvale Road is in business. The one in Clearview
Is not
is
yet.
not yet.
She just opened.
But that's where it was
Showed it up.
generated,
Delana went to her the other day, she's open.
She's open?
Yeah, he's got.
but that's where it's generated from.
Yeah.
Now, the gunsmith business, that should fall under the hazardous materials and the issues that are associated with the manufacturing or
Well-
storage of materials that
It's
are
a
clearly
difference.
defined.
It's a difference between gunsmithing and manufacturing. Gunsmithing usually don't entail much of, or don't entail anything with manufacturing. It's usually just fixing triggers or modifying a weapon in some way.
So you haven't seen machine shop type equipment, lathes, drill presses, cutting oils,
Generally not in gunsmithing. Gun manufacturing, you do. And that's where you typically get the bluing and the chemicals that are associated with the bluing process that can be hazardous chemicals. If mixed together, or and most of those hazards are not explosive hazards, but airborne hazards. So if
Okay.
the house catches on fire and you've got fumes and flames coming in.
Yeah, I mean, the fire department's supposed to have MSDSs on file of these businesses, so they know what they're walking into if there's a fire in that location.
Yes.
Does that happen?
Well, we don't have any gun manufacturing businesses. We just have either sales or gunsmithing.
Okay.
When the one came through from Poston Place, I talked to the ATF on several different occasions, and they actually called me. I didn't call them on the first conversation that we had. And they gave me a lot of information on gun sales, and he said that there wasn't a such thing as just selling guns over the internet. That the only way that the ATF issues those, or they issue those license, is if that it is a full retail store. So he said, so if somebody comes in and says, we're just wanting to sell guns and do it over the internet, he said, that's not true, because they have to get a full retail license to do that. As far as the manufacturing point went, he said that certain things requires them to get a manufacturing license, not just a sales license. And so when we found out that the gentleman in Poston Place was actually going to have to apply for a manufacturer's license, the information that I gave to the Board of Zoning Appeals had they acted on it, they should have acted with a decision not to issue it based on the hazards that had potentially be on the premises. So I don't feel like that if he had went forward with it, that it ever would have got issued anyway.
The existing specifications we have would have covered that situation had it gone to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Hazardous material would have, because
Yes,
the bluing agent alone was enough.
Okay, so with the beauty salons, what is the major issue concerning that type of business in residential? Is it parking? Is it chemicals? What is it?
Most people are concerned about the traffic that it has the potential of generating, which, like I said, could be handled at the Board of Zoning Appeals level with that conditional use permit saying, you're not allowed to have X amount of cars parked in your driveway at any given time. Something of that nature. Others have concern with the chemicals that they use in giving permanence and the dyeing of hair. And I don't know what those hazards, or if, there is a lot of hazards with that or not. I don't really know.
Signage?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Signs by our ordinances are not allowed. Now, the licensing board for cosmetology requires them to have a sign.
Who wins?
Huh?
Who wins?
So,
Always.
Because they don't get their
but it's
license.
not a state regulation. It's the licensing board regulation. It's not a state law or it's not in the TCA. It's not in the Tennessee Code Annotated that way. It's just a licensing board requirement. Now, what they have done is, because they have to have a sign up when they come out and do the initial inspection, they'll put a sign out for the initial inspection, and then they take it down. But they get inspected once a year. And I think they pretty well know when that inspection is, so they could put the sign back out for their next inspection. And so right now, our codes does not allow signage. So if they have a sign out, they're in violation of our ordinance. And we would cite them as such. One of the new ones that just got approved will probably be getting a letter tomorrow.
That one moved further back in the yard, so I was wondering if that was, if that was part of it, it had to be offset so far from the home or the street, and within the signage, what the requirements that cosmetology has, what is there? Is it an advertisement? Is it?
It just says that it don't give a specific size. It just says that they've got to have the name of the business.
Mm-hmm.
And so the planning commission, prior to the three new members coming on, have had discussions on this topic and have made a recommendation, but we haven't sent it to the board yet because I was wanting to get the whole sign ordinance looked at instead of just doing pieces here and there to make those changes. And the recommendation from the planning commission was a sign, 8x10 sign of a earth tone color with white or black lettering that has to be attached to the house or the mailbox if permitted by the U.S. Postal Service.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I thought we had approved for them to use their sign until we make a decision.
I think we did too.
I think we did. I remember that vote.
I don't know if we did or not.
Well, the main reason that the state wanted to do it is for location, so they can figure out where it's at, wasn't it?
It's just so when the inspector comes out, he knows where they're at.
Yeah, that's what my understanding was.
I'll go back and look at the minutes.
I'm pretty sure we told them that they were able to do that until we made a decision, because how else are they going to follow the state guidelines?
Well, if
Licensing board.
Or licensing board?
if it's just there for them to know where they're located, then they know when they're having their inspection, so they can put the sign back up so they know where they're at. And that's what I've been told. It's just so the licensing board or the inspector that comes out knows where to go. And I don't know why he can't just look at the mailbox number and know that's where he's supposed to be, but.
Well, her question in that is if you're sending a letter out of violation, then
Right, a violation, but I
are
thought
you
we-
correct in that letter?
Yeah. I thought we had voted that until we make a decision on the sign ordinance that they were allowed to have.
Well, this board couldn't do that.
No, it has to go before the Board of
It had to be
Commissioners
the Board
anyway.
of Commissioners to make that decision.
The Board of Commissioners can repeal an ordinance, change an ordinance, but they can't suspend an ordinance. And this board can't suspend an ordinance. The Board of Commissioners can repeal the ordinance, but they can't suspend the ordinance. They can pass an ordinance and say it will go into effect 6 months from now, but they can't take an existing ordinance and just suspend the enforcement. They can repeal it, and you wouldn't be enforcing it while you were repealing it, but you can't just suspend the ordinance. The problem with between the cosmetologist and their licensing board, well, I'm sympathetic to it, and I think something needs to be worked out with it, but that's a problem between them and their licensing board. That's not a problem between us and them and the city, because it's not a state statute. That's them and their licensing board.
I believe the Board of Commissioners made a decision on it. Oh, we had discussion on it. I think we had came to an agreement on it, so I just have to look that up, find out.
Gutter. That's what I'm saying. I know.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second on the laying out of the elimination of conditional use permits with RS 15, R20, RSM 40, and RS 40 staying conditional permit. Okay? Everything else will be eliminated that we've already lined out. If there's no further discussion, and it does not appear that we want to go any further than that, then I think we should have a vote to decide if that's how we want to proceed with moving forward on these major home occupations in these specific zoning. If we all agree on that, then let's make an up or down vote.
Could you repeat the first part that you said again as far as the what?
Before that will not change, that will continue to be conditional use permits, starting from the left of the chart, will be RS 40, RSM 40, R20, and RS 15. The AR 15A and AR 5A will continue also to be conditional use as well. And that mirrors what Mr. Benson, excuse me. 6 years together. Mr. Benson's motion. Do we have a vote? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, so we can write that up to be sent to the Board of Commissioners for their approval.
We'll make the changes in the chart and in the ordinance with and bring it back to you all for your review to make sure that's what you want before we send it to the Board of Commissioners.
Okay.
And then you can vote on it as a formal recommendation to the Board of Commissioners at that time.
All right. Item 8, new business, we have none. Item 9, reports for discussion and information, planning zoning code department, Mr. LeVorn.
We had a pre-construction meeting today with Walmart. They paid for their building permit, and we'll be getting started putting in their erosion control over the next few days. They're still saying that their contract with Walmart, the general contractors, has to turn over the building to Walmart September 14th. Walmart is slated for grand opening October 30th, barring that there are no delays in the project from now until then. This year? Yes, this year.
Tell them, please put a sign up.
We discussed signs today, so I'm sure they'll probably be putting up one pretty soon. And I think, I guess that's...
I know there was talk back about giving them a 24-hour work variance. Did that ever happen, or they...
They said that their work hours will be from sun up to sundown.
Okay.
and they will, I mean, if they work in the building, there's no guidelines for construction in commercial areas. It's only relative to residential areas.
Okay.
MAPCO works all night long.
Yeah.
Has MAPCO been completed in terms of CO and got their issues taken care of that we talked about last
They're
month?
still under a temporary, and will be until the weather gets right for them to be able to paint the metal doors on the back of the building. And I think we gave them 60 days on the second temporary to make sure we could get out of the cold temperatures, so they could be able to get that done.
Okay. Anything else for the planning and codes? City engineer is not here tonight. City attorney, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll make mine brief and so people can get out early. Commissioner Basel's not here tonight. He always kids me about that if I get close to an hour, I'm going to talk past the hour so I can build the city. That's his and I running joke, and the other night, I didn't say much, and he talked a long time and made a point of that. But I do have one thing that I want to say. I'm not going to ever say that one board or one committee is more important than another, because that's not true. They all have a place, they all have a time in which they enter the fray, so to speak. As Don said a minute ago, the Board of Zoning Appeals. Until somebody has an appeal from some administrative decision, the Board of Zoning Appeals is just out there waiting to be called. But at the time that they come into the picture, they're very important. But for the benefit of the three new members that are here, the ones that are here have heard me say this before. The Planning Commission serves a very vital and very important process in the city government. Some committees and boards are in at the end of something. This board is at the beginning of almost everything that happens. And the decisions that you make, of course, it'll be a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. But you have done the legwork. You have done the studies. You have sit and listened to the citizens' comments on it. And you came up with a decision. And I think it's a good decision. I always compliment the boards on the job that they do, because we are very fortunate in this city to have a diversity of thought, very enlightened people on those boards who want to do a good job. I don't care how bright you are or how prepared you are. If you don't really care what happens, you're never going to do a good job. And it's obvious to me, I don't do some of the things in the city that you do, but it's very obvious to me that you care about the city and you care enough to enlighten yourself on the topic that's to be discussed that night or that day or whatever you may be doing. And I just wanted to pass it along to you that I think that, especially for the benefit of three new members, that the job that you do is very, very important. I'm not going to say it's any more important than any other board, because they all have their place. But you are there at the beginning. Some of the stuff, if you don't catch early, it's stuff that people don't have to deal with because you've already taken care of it. And I appreciate the opportunity to work with you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I have, and I'll hush before the hour's up.
Mr. Behan?
A couple of things. One, I would like to, at some point in the near future, discuss the plan for the town center and where that is going. From what I've understood, the plan that has been done was done quite some time ago. There are parts of it that are no longer viable, particularly the center street that goes through there because of property that's been sold off. And I think that's something that we need to get a handle on before our growth overtakes what we envision that wanting to be. From what I understand, there's no digital drawings on this. There's no more copies of what is there. So that is something I feel that is very important to the town moving forward. Secondly, I don't know if there is a way as far as moving forward, if there is a member not in place or how this works as far as a proxy vote. Personally, I know the next 2 meetings, I had prior business arrangements that I have to be at, so I will not be able to attend the next 2 meetings, but would still go through the work and be prepared as I were to be here. Is there a vehicle in place for things that are going to be voted on?
Mr. Attorney. I've often wondered that.
There is not, and there may be some problems with that.
Okay.
They had an incident, a thing came up in Franklin, the county did, the school board, I believe it was, and they had to get approval, I think, from the state to be able to do that.
You have to have the approval, you have to have a plan in place for how it's going to be carried out.
Because he was in Colorado or something, and it's going to be moving, but it can be done, but it's a process.
There's something in place to allow that, and it's a drawn-out process.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay. Mr. Mitchell?
Have anything, not?
Ms. Anderson?
I just wanted to let everybody know that our boys basketball team is doing extremely well. We've got the playoffs because we've done so well. I believe our record is 15-5, something like that, which is incredible. And they're having their tournament game on Thursday night at 7 at the high school. So I encourage everybody to come out and, support them like, we do our football team, because they work just as hard and they've just got an incredible season going on. So I just wanted to bring that up and make sure that everybody, keeps your money in Fairview, shop here. We know with the economy, it's real important just to keep your money in your city so that we can, grow and improve.
Thank you. Mr. Sutton?
Just 1 or 2 things. I've always said, shop local, spend your money here. Tonight during comments, when we had the earlier meeting, one of the comments was made about the public helping police some of the rules and regulations that we have. And that's absolutely necessary. There's no way in the world that we can be everywhere at one time. And that's one reason we put the big yellow signs out there. And, we want that input to come in so that we can get better understanding of what's going on out there, because we just, it's impossible to sit up here and know everything that's going on. And y'all are a good example of what, by y'all's attention to what happened in Folsom Place, we were able to get into it a lot more and solve that problem. So just never quit doing that, and please continue to do that. That's all I have.
Ms. Elliott?
Commissioner Sutton's point was actually one that I also wish to make, and thank you for coming and for your consistent comments and insight into the situation, and I hope that we'll continue to see you. And I also, somewhat related to Mr. Behan's comment, have been thinking about the long-range plan. I'm surprised at how many citizens, when they hear that I'm on the Planning Commission, ask me, whatever happened to that long-range plan? And I look forward to hearing more about that and developing it, finding ways to enforce it, and I'm sure that's a bite that none of us can take in the short range, but again, it's something that we'd like to be updated about. We'd like to know, where are we and where are we headed? And I very much appreciate your work, Mr. Smith. I know that it's not easy to lead a group like this, and especially on a somewhat emotionally charged topic like the one tonight. And thank you for your service.
Thank you.
I have nothing further to add, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Pence?
Mr. Chairman, I have nothing further to add. Thank you.
Okay. We, last meeting, talked about a workshop, and if you are not going to be here, I will be open to discuss whether we should continue to have our land use plan workshop next month like we originally talked about. It's a very important thing, and if not everyone is going to be here, I think that we may want to look at another date. Also, I think the town center plan could be rolled into that meeting, and talked about, and if we need to extend it or have another meeting, we can make that determination at that time. But I want everybody's opinion and input on something so much as this land use plan, so.
Mr. Chairman,
What do you think?
if I could just throw a suggestion out there, of course, you can always, and we do this on the board, if we've got something to say, we can say it at any time, as long as we make a decision on it. And you will have full access to all the information that we have when we come into a meeting. It's going to be almost impossible to say we're not going to discuss something if everybody's not here. So, you know, my thing on that was be, if there's two or more not here, we move it.
Okay.
I'm just, you know, just
That's
throwing
fair.
that out there because
It's a
inevitably,
valid point.
something's going to happen. I'm going to be sick, he's going to be gone. Something's going to happen, so.
Okay.
That's just my suggestion for you to be able to carry that on.
Well, I think then we'll go ahead and continue with our plan at 5:30 on the next meeting date for the land use plan. Please look at your maps. We'll bring at least one in and spread it out, take a look at it and discuss that one, and also the latest one, and then also the town center plan. And I think I may have access to one of the old original town center plan. So I'll look around. I've asked Don to supply all of the planning commission with an updated member roster with emails in terms of office. And he's working on that for us. And he can email that to everybody, or they can pass it out. And
Email
that
it, I wouldn't
again.
have put it in our phones.
And that's everything we have right now. Just keep in mind these decisions that we make. There are appeal processes and there are grandfather clauses. Anything that we do will be moving forward and will not affect existing businesses. The businesses that would be affected, there is a process to appeal, given if the owner of that business chooses to. So we are a recommendation-based board. We send this up to the city commissioners for the vote. But as the city attorney said, we do the work to get to the point where we can get it into the specifications. So I do appreciate all your help and all your time. And if there's nothing else, I need a motion to adjourn.
Bring up
One more
thing.
thing? Okay.
I'm sorry, I meant to say this. I've talked to several of my friends who listen to us, who tune in and listen to us. And I just wanted to bring up, not everybody has a voice that projects like mine. And they said that the majority of the people, to make sure that we have our mics on and speak loudly, because when they listen to us on on TV, it's a mumble. They can't hear what we're speaking about. So if we've got all this important things to say and they can't understand what we're saying, then it's frustrating.
Can I add to that? When I'm listening to the minutes, if you don't speak up and talk into your mics, I cannot understand what you're saying. So sometimes, even though sometimes I do have trouble spelling.
Okay.
But I mean, we got to make sure our mics are on, and, I don't need a mic, but, some people, their voices are soft, and, it's like, you've really got to speak into that mic, or, the people that are tuning in because they can't be here, they can't understand what's being said.
You'll probably get some help on that when the new Windstream system comes online, because the quality of the picture will be better, the quality of the sound will also be better. I mean, it doesn't mean you're not going to speak up where somebody can hear you, but it should be better when that comes on.
I've had, a situation where I've turned off my mic for some reason and I forget to turn it back on. So that's kind of another, because that's not going to help if the mic's completely off, but, right.
The town center ordinance, everybody should have a copy of the town center ordinance. What we don't have a copy of is the 2020 comprehensive plan. That's the one that, the copies that got printed up were the copies that we had, and whoever got those copies no longer are with us. And Grisham & Smith doesn't have an electronic copy that they can even give me. So what I have in my office is all we have. That's what we don't have. So everybody should have the town center ordinance.
Sounds like we need to hire somebody to do new drawings on all of that.
Motion to adjourn.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
A second? Thank you for coming, folks.